Welcome to TEP Talks, Episode 3. TEP Talks is a new service provided by the TEP Foundation, Inc. TEP Foundation, Inc. is the 88-year-old charitable arm of Tau Epsilon Phi Fraternity. TEP Foundation is a nonprofit New York State registered 501c3 whose mission statement it is to provide scholarship award and education to our valued undergraduate and alumni brotherhood. TEP Talks are used as a platform to educate, promote, and explore the accomplishments of Tau Epsilon Phi Fraternity's most distinguished alumni. That said, our third guest is former Consul Stu Blumberg. Stu, how are you?
Doing great, Jason.
We're very glad to have you on the show as our third guest.
Well, I would have preferred to be first since I'm the oldest as consul, but you shoved me back to third place, so I'll have to settle for that.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start with some simple background information. I want you to tell everybody basically where you're from, where you grew up, and where did you study?
Well, I was born in New York City. I moved to Miami Beach at the age of 9 years old. Went through grade school, high school, and continued my studies at the University of Florida in Gainesville, where I spent 4 years, got a degree, and also became a brother of the Tau Alpha chapter of Tau Epsilon Phi.
And what did you study in school? What was your major?
My major was political science, with all great intentions of going to law school, which never happened.
I also started, my major was poli-sci and I was minoring in history and I switched both. So I know what that feels like. And when did you join TEP? Tell us what year you joined.
I have been a TEP since December of 1954. So that makes me going into my 69th year as a brother.
Wow.
I still keep in touch with the remaining members of my pledge class, of which 32 got initiated, and there are 9 of us left, of which 5 of us had a mini reunion just recently in Orlando. All of us are in our mid-80s, and we still function.
Can you tell everybody why you wanted to join TEP? What was it about TEP that stood out to you, and possibly even what stood out against other fraternities that you could have joined at the time?
To be perfectly honest with you, I had no choice. I came out of Beach High, which was basically a feeding ground to the TEPs in Gainesville. Miami Beach and Jacksonville were the two areas that made up most of the Brotherhood of Tau Alpha. I got rushed by Pi Lam, which was also a very strong local presence in the Miami area. But I had a gentleman who I went to high school with, who was a senior at the time when I got to Gainesville. He was about 6'6". He weighed about 220 pounds and had the wingspan of about 7 feet. He rushed me, and I was thinking about, what I was going to do, and he had me come over to the house during rush, and he took me into a bedroom, of which he said to me very distinctly, "Stu, I'm going to lock you in here until you make up your mind that you're going to go TEP." And with that, he proceeded to lock me in the room.
Wow.
I thought it was a joke. So I sat there for a few minutes and I said, "Okay, you can come open it up." And nothing happened. And I was there for 40 minutes in this room saying to myself, what am I going to do? If I say no to him, he'll destroy me. And he opened the door and he said, "Well, have you made up your mind?" And I said, "Where do I sign?" I haven't regretted the decision to this day.
So you really didn't have a choice.
I really didn't have a choice. I was leaning to TEP. the beach guys and the Jacksonville guys really stuck together. But Rush was interesting. A 17-year-old, you feel that somebody wants you, and you enjoy the limelight of Rush Week. But really, in the back of my mind, he really didn't have to do that. But it was the clincher.
Oh, they got you by hook or by crook.
Yeah, for sure.
So thinking about your time at Tau Alpha, can you tell us any memories, other fond memories besides that memory that you may have, or if you can remember anything of significance when you were an undergraduate?
Well, the significance of being there at that particular time was when we decided, or the alumni decided, that they wanted to build a new house on Fraternity Row. We had been in our old house since the late 30s, and it was time to move. So the alumni had a fundraising where they raised money for a new house. And my class, the second semester of our senior year, we were the first class to move into the new house. And it was like moving into a Holiday Inn. Each room had 2 beds, 2 desks, 2 dressers. I mean, it was really first class. And so that new house, which is now 65 years old and ready to crumble, it's a fire trap. But it still houses an active chapter, or an active whatever they want to call it at this point. And I went back to visit it about a year ago, and brought back a lot of memories. When you build a new house, it has a fancy dining room and a fancy kitchen and showers and bathrooms. I mean, all brand new. And to walk into the house now and see in the condition that young boys are living in was a little bit of a culture shock. But the chapter is still what the chapter was back then. A strong group of young men forming a friendship. And the other great memory I've had about that was we dedicated the house on a parents' weekend, and I was a little bit rambunctious in my younger days, and proceeded to drive my car into the dining room behind the closed.
You drove your car into the house.
Yeah, the dining room opened up into the backyard of the house, and there was a screen, a permanent screen that separated the formal living room from the dining room. And in the formal living room were the parents and the school officials. And I said, well, here I am. I'm going to be a senior. What could they do to me? They can't suspend me anymore. I've been that way twice. So I drove the car into the dining room, and then they proceeded to open the screen door. And there I was sitting in the car. Needless to say, my parents were not thrilled to see that, but it was part of the chapter's history.
Wow, that's a great story. And could you just tell us one more thing, because you're telling me a little bit before, and we'll talk about that as well, about your travels. But could you tell everybody, since you're in your 80s, for the younger guys, what it was like to socialize, what social events were like back then in the 50s?
Well, we're talking about the 50s. We're talking about a campus that had 9,000 students, which now has 56,000 students. You had 9,000 students. You lived in a dry county, so that you had to go 16 miles out to the state line, to the county line, to get your whiskey to bring back into the fraternity house. Building the new house, the architects were kind enough to build a basement in the house. And that basement became where we had our social functions and parties. Everyone says, oh, we get the best parties on campus. The reality was that we did give the best parties on campus. We brought in the bands from all over the state, and that basement was a godsend because we were able to not destroy the rest of the house. And we had all our parties down there. And, fraternities became a part of your life because as an independent in a 9,000 campus, you were a lost soul if you didn't go fraternity.
Right.
Fraternities now are not a primary thought when young guys are going to college campuses now, because there's so much activity going on a college campus and social media and all the distractions that you really don't need fraternity life. And so I remain not active in my chapter, but I watch it. I keep in touch with the guys who are running it now. The element of brotherhood and friendship is still the key to when you join. You're not forced to join. There's other things to do in Gainesville, but for some reason, fraternity life still remains very strong on that campus.
And final question about you being an undergraduate. What positions did you hold in the chapter?
None.
Oh.
No, the story is an interesting story, Jason. Like I said, I was a gung-ho fraternity guy. No two ways about it. To this day, keeping in touch with my 9 remaining brothers that tells you exactly how I feel about the fraternity and the friendships. But I never held a public office, and I had all intentions of going to law school. With my roommate and 3 other guys, we were all set. We were going to live together in Gainesville, and that was it. One night at dinner, the guys called me and said, "You have a phone call." I said, "Who's it from?" They said, "We don't know. They're asking for you." So we had a little payphone booth in the entrance to the house. I picked up the phone, and it was Sid Suntag.
Wow.
And Sidney said to me, "Stu, how you doing, my friend?" And I said, "Sidney, I'm doing great." He says, "You're getting ready to graduate?" I said, "Yep." I said, "Getting ready to graduate, going to go to law school, and thank you for calling." He said, "Well, let me run something by you." I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm looking to hire my first full-time field secretary for the fraternity to travel around to all the chapters nationally, because I don't want to travel as much as I've been traveling. I know your record in the House, and I'd like to offer you the job." And I said, "You got to be kidding." I said, "Number one, I'm not an officer of the chapter. I have my plans for my future." He said, "Stu, I think this is an opportunity for you to maybe broaden your horizons and mature a little bit. You can always go back." When he threw that line at me, "You can always go back to school. After you finish, it's only a 2-year commitment. And I'd really love to have you. You live in New York and you travel." And I said, "Can I get back to you?" And he said, "Sure." I had an advisor who was like a second father to me at the chapter. And I went to him and I said, "Sam, what about this phone call?" He said, "Well, I hate to tell you, but I'm the guy that called Suntag and said he should hire you." I said, "Well, I figured that was going to happen.
Right.
What do you think I should do?" He said, "Stu, you should take it. You have an opportunity to broaden yourself, get out there, visit other campuses, see other guys, and you can come back. I'll still be here with my wife, and we'll welcome you back. And I said, okay. I ran it by my parents, and they said, well, you're going to save us some money. We don't have to send you to law school. And I took the job. Unfortunately, Sidney didn't give me all the details on the phone. And so when I got there, I discovered that my salary was $4,500 a year, which came to less than $50 a week or something like that. And then I said to him, well, my expenses and living expenses. He says, oh, no, you're going to sleep in the Columbia House. I said, oh, no, I've had enough of living in fraternity houses.
Right.
I'm gonna live in an apartment with three of my friends who are coming up from Miami, going to law school, and I'll cover my expenses with that. He said, okay. And I said, what about, airplane flying and everything? He said, Stu, let me explain to you. I go on the airplanes. I go south in the winter when it's warmer.
Right.
You go north in the winter by train and bus. And that's going to be the way you travel. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me all these things on the phone call? And he said, because I knew you wouldn't take the job. And it was probably the best decision that I had ever made. Because, go ahead.
No, you first. Finish.
No, what it did for me, Jason, was I spent 2 years, a little over 2 years, traveling to about 100 campuses, not only hanging out with young guys who, after 24 hours, discovered that I was not a stuck in the mud pain in the ass, but a good guy to party with and be part of food fights and all sorts of things. And I always got fixed up with the best looking girl on campus when I got there. But what it did do for me was I found myself at the age of 21 sitting in the office of presidents of universities, deans, fraternity advisors across the country. And what it did for me was put me on a level of maturity for a business career into the future, where I wasn't awkward when I decided to make a career for myself. And being able to go one-on-one with these women and men of higher education and handling myself in that manner was probably the greatest experience I ever had. And so when I came back and left the fraternity to start my career, I was 9 jumps ahead of anybody else that was coming out of business school. And I really had no desire to go back to law school at that point. It was time to move on.
And can you tell everybody what you did professionally, what your job was? So when you left and then you moved into the...
Well, professionally, I worked my way through college as a bellman in Miami Beach, and decided that hotels were a career for me. And I spent 56 years in the hotel industry in Miami Beach, managing hotels. And then the last 20 years before I retired, I was head of the Hotel Association for Miami-Dade County, and also head of hotel legislation at the state of Florida. And I retired 13 years ago, and I still have interest in the industry. I still spend time in Tallahassee. I still try to make the industry a better place. But it became a full-time career for me, and I never looked back.
And what are the things that you found most exciting about your career? And if you can think about it, possibly what was challenging?
Well, running a hotel association, running a hotel is different. In those days, you were personally hands-on. I could never handle what's going on now. The computer age and the technology has taken the personal touch out of the hotel industry. When I was general manager of the hotel, I used to know every guest. I used to walk the hotel, walk the pool area, knew them by first name. I didn't have a resident manager, a hotel manager, a front desk manager, a list manager. It was me. And I was able to know every employee and every guest. And that's missing these days. There are too many levels of red tape. The general manager now never sees a guest. It just doesn't happen anymore. And so those formative years of running a hotel made it possible for me to move into association work. And I formed a hotel association and was president of it for 20 years before I retired. Again, when I look back on it, there was certain legislations that I not only had passed in Tallahassee, but also wrote. One in particular is the Clean Air Act, which allows tourists to smoke outside of restaurants and hotels, which was against what the Constitution said, that you couldn't smoke anywhere. So I got that changed, which I'm very proud of, and some other legislative things on behalf of the industry. In addition to that, I became very involved in my Miami community, creating legacies back and forth. Never won a popularity contest, I can tell you that. I have a mentality of what was an old expression. I didn't write it. It was called lead, follow, or get out of my way. I have a no prisoners mentality. And I wanted to get things done. And it wasn't to be popular, but I got the things done. And never got any great awards or stuff like that. But that wasn't the issue for me. The issue was to do what I thought was right and get it done. And so I'm very proud of it. I don't think I would have done it any different.
And going back to TEP, can you talk a little bit more about your experience on Grand Council and the positions you held, and then how your time was spent as consul and what that experience was like?
Well, being the age that I am, I am probably the last connection that goes back to the days of our founder, Doc Schwartz. When I got hired as field secretary, I went to my first Grand Council meeting and sat next to Doc Schwartz,
Wow.
which was like, are you kidding me?
Sure.
I'm sitting next to Alpha One. I'm 21 years old. I'm surrounded by TEP legends, Isidore Hyman, Joe Gerson, people like that. I mean, it was incredible. And they didn't know what to make of me. I was the first one hired on Sidney's recommendation. And so they looked at me like, okay, so you're here. So just sit there and listen. And that first year of traveling, which is what I did until the second year came about, which got me the nickname of One Suit Stu, which is in the history books, and it got me a raise from 4,500. But yeah, that was an experience, and they then realized the value of a field secretary, and they realized that it was a good guy. and sort of said, "You're in. You're one of us," and it was great. Strangely enough, though, what happened was when I left the fraternity staff, I became inactive. I didn't do anything regarding the fraternity. I didn't go to conventions. I didn't follow anything. I didn't decide to get involved in a national office. I was very happy. I took over the Tau Alpha Foundation, and I was very active in my local chapter, which was fine. And I had nothing to do with anything or anybody with National. I kept in touch with Sid and his family on a social friendship basis, but I had no interest in a fraternity until, and that's the word, until I got a call from Sid asking me if I would introduce one of my pledge brothers at an Orlando convention in 1986, I think it was, in Orlando, introduce him who was getting the Man of the Year award.
Mm-hmm.
And I said no.
Hmm.
He said, "Why not? He's your pledge brother," which, by the way, he still is. I said, I have my differences with him, and I'm not comfortable in introducing him.
Right.
So Sid said, "Well, I hope you change your mind." I said, "No, Sid, you know me better than that." So about 3 days later, he calls me again. And he says, "Stu, would you be the master of ceremonies for the dinner? You don't have to introduce them." I said, "Well, okay, I can do that." Okay. It would be my first connection back to National. At the same time, the executive secretary at the time was Mike Ivers. And I get a call from the chancellor of Tau Alpha. He says, "Mr. Blumberg, this is Mark Shubin." I said, "Yeah, Mark. I called you because I'm being debrotherized."
Ooh.
So I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I wanted to initiate the class. They hadn't done some certain things, but I initiated them anyway, and Mr. Ivers is going to pull my pin and debrotherize me." I said, "No, he's not. Ain't going to happen." I called Ivers. I said, "Mike, you can't do it." He says, "I'm going to do it. Don't you tell me what I can do and what I can't do. I'm executive secretary, and this is what I'm going to do." I said, "Okay." So I go to Orlando to MC the dinner. I sit down with Al Versace and Jerry Denmark, the current consul at that time and the former consul. I said, "Guys, let me be perfectly clear with the two of you. It's either Ivers or me."
Mm.
I said, "I've been around longer than anybody. I deserve the respect that I'm supposed to get. And either I have him rescind his order or I want him gone."
Wow.
I mean, I don't know who's going to watch this podcast. I hope Ivers doesn't. But
We'll find out soon enough.
and Al and Jerry proceeded to go to Mike and say, "Mike, your history." And Mike went, "Whoa, what? Nope, you're no longer going to be executive secretary." The pin wasn't pulled. I went on to be master of ceremonies for the dinner. And at that time, the new consul was sworn in. Trying to remember. No, the new council wasn't sworn. The new board was sworn in, and one of the vice chairs or vice consuls was Bob Goldman. And so I left Orlando and came home and said, "Well, that's it. cleaned up that mess, let me go back to my work. And all of a sudden I get a call again from Sidney. Denmark then Jerry was consul.
Yeah, Jerry.
His second term.
Right.
And Sid said, Stu, I got something to ask you. I said, what now? What now? He said, Bob Goldman decided to step down as vice consul and wants to be executive secretary. So I said, okay, great. Good for Bob. He said, no, but now we have a vacancy on the consul as vice consul. I said, okay, go ahead, drop the other shoe. He said, would you, as a favor to, once he said as a favor to me, I was screwed.
Yeah.
He said, as a favor to me, would you take the seat? All you got to do is come to 3 meetings a year in Atlanta, and that's all you have to do. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I go to my first meeting in Atlanta in 87. Yeah, 87. And I hear through the grapevine that the next consul, who was going to be Leo, was not the favorite candidate of the current administration for whatever reason. And I had no idea what it was. And I was approached. I had gone to my first meeting or my second meeting. And I was approached by Al, who said, listen, there are some issues in succession here. Would you consider being consul? I said, wait a minute. I was inactive for 30 years. I just emceed. I just got rid of, removed an executive secretary and got another one. I'm sitting on here for just 2 meetings. And what happened to the chairs of succession? Well, it's an odd situation, Stu. Would you consider being consul? And in 89, in Baltimore at the convention, I was installed as consul, succeeding Jerry, and I was installed by Sid.
Wow.
Which was, at that time, we knew Sid was sick. And it was full circle for me. To have him install me as consul after having hired me as his first assistant was something, Jason, I will never forget. Never forget. And right after I became consul, a year after, he passed away. And 2 weeks after that, his wife passed away. And at the 91 convention in Miami Beach, we invited his daughter and granddaughter to the convention as our guest, where Leo succeeded me as consul. And then right after the convention, Sid's daughter, Avril, committed suicide and left her daughter, which Al adopted and raised. So the stories to tell regarding that are just all due to the fraternity, and all, to me, due to a phone call and a payphone offering me a job. To this day, the 5 past consuls, I think there's 5 of us, we Zoom once a month. No, I'm sorry, once every 2 weeks, and talk to each other and talk about what's going on in life and fraternities and this and that. And it's really great. In fact, we have the next one tomorrow. And it's good to keep in touch with the guys. We try to get together once a year in some location and break bread. But it all goes back to why you're a brother, why I'm a brother. It goes back to the friendships that you make and their lifetime. I've always told people that when I used to travel as field man, the guys that are sitting in the room now are going to be your friends for the rest of your life, no matter raising a family, getting married, doing all that stuff. These guys are going to be your friends the rest of your life. You get the same look. Oh, yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true.
So as we wrap up, and you have quite an amazing story to tell, and I'm very glad that you were able to do that with us. Could you just tell us, as a distinguished alumni of TEP, what your message is to the Brotherhood?
Well, I think I just gave that. It's all about friendship. Yes, the fraternity has a creed. Fraternity has respectful, I don't want to say rules, but you follow the traditions of the fraternity that are on paper, which is great. You wear your pin, you do this, you do that. You spend 4 years in college, you make your grades, you may find your future spouse, you party, you graduate. All of that's great, becoming a member of the fraternity. But at the end of the day, like I just said, you look around the room and you look at the guys that are there, not only in your pledge class, but the next 3 years that come after you. That generation of guys who you're going to remain friendly with, who your little brothers are, and people like that. And when you graduate, the best advice I can give anybody graduating is don't lose contact with your brothers. Don't look at it as 4 years and hey, let's move on. Keep in touch with them. And thanks to you and others who have the social media means to keep us all active and know what's going on in the fraternity, it's important. It's important. And I think what's interesting, to close it up for you, Jason, when I was consul, which was 1989 to 91, Don Ansbach was on my board. And Don Ansbach is now consul of the fraternity. So it's a tough group to get away from. Once you're in, you're in. And I hope that Tau Alpha chapter, which is still technically a colony, will get its chapter this spring. And I'd like to be there when they award their charter to them. That would be full circle for me as well.
Well, Stu, Suit Stu, I want to thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on our show as our third guest. You have an amazing story. You've given so much to the fraternity, and for that, I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my fraternal heart.
Thank you, Jason.
If you are or know of any alumni who'd like to participate on our podcast, please send an email to president@thetepfoundation.org. We want to highlight your accomplishments both within and outside of Tau Epsilon Phi. You can also find more information about the TEP Foundation, Inc. by going to the web at www.tep.org/foundation. You may also follow us on social media by subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on Instagram, and or adding our Facebook page. Once again, Stu Blumberg, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. Happy New Year.
You as well.